On that note,
And
we have to go into the mental body.
okay, so let's go. I'm
Let's go.
ready. And,
Okay. So let me share my screen. Daniela, are you okay?
Yes.
I mean, we're talking.
Just listening today.
okay. Sorry, I've been dominating, so please jump
We
in.
No, no.
Okay.
I know you have so many questions and things to discuss. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
listening.
Obrigado.
we got we got really deep here with a lot of stuff. But what what we just talked about is actually very important to understand where we're going to go right now with the mental body. And as we go through the mental body, I'll actually show you, why those things were important. Okay, so what do you see on the screen?
I see the meridian order of mental body, and it starts with bladder, gallbladder.
Okay, so you'll see the elements. The bladder comes from a yin element of water. It's actually the yang meridian of the water element. Okay, and then on the right side, you'll see the astrology element of the bladder is air.
Okay.
So it's Gemini, the planet Mercury. The astrological element is air, mutable.
Communication and connection.
Yes.
Okay.
So to really understand the mental body, you have to tune into what this symbol is, because that's going to set the vibration for the mental body.
So it's the ocean. It's the big water. It's tumultuous on the surface and calm and quiet on the deep.
Let's go even more basic than that.
Okay.
It's movement. When you look at Gemini or the planet Mercury, it's someone who likes to read. It's someone who likes to just drive around the neighborhood. When you get to like Jupiter and Sagittarius and you like to travel around the world, Gemini just likes to go around the neighborhood. See how people are doing. Just take short little drives. It's just movement. It's just kind of getting things started. It's looking around. So it's that beginning of just something is moving. When I first was trying to understand this order, a story came to my mind, and I still have not found a better story. It's a story of a person who, they were on a boat and a storm hit, and they had to jump ship, and they landed on one of those little boats on a ship because the big ship went down. And it was in the middle of the night, and they went to sleep. So in the morning, this little boat is like rocking with the waves, and as they feel the movement of the boat rocking in the waves, and they're still kind of half asleep. And that's that first step of the mental body, is when you begin to feel that movement. According to Chinese acupuncture, when a person wakes up in the morning, these points right above the eye activate. And once these points activate, the eyes open and they begin to look around. So this bladder meridian, as the first step, talks about waking up. You're asleep, and then you feel that movement, and that movement is activating the bladder meridian, and you're about to wake up. When people go into meditation and they want to blank their mind, and they just want to stop all talking from their subconscious, what they're really trying to do is get into this state of the bladder meridian in the mental order. Because once you can get into that very basic state of consciousness of the mental body, when it really starts, your mind just begins to open up, and you can really free the mind to explore anything. But that's just the first step. You're just creating that vibration for the mind to begin to express and move. So it's really, really important here to understand this first step of the mental body, because there's 11 more. When you see meditation practices in other parts of the world where they say just sit there and calm your mind down until all you feel is nothingness, until you're just there, but you have no thoughts, nothing. So they get people to go back to that original state of the mental body, but the mental body wants to develop. It wants to think. It wants to develop all these ideas. So some meditation practices actually block mental development until you can actually begin to see the mental development in the meditation. So many people, after they've lived a really hard life and they've had a lot of sins, they've had problems and challenges, and they say, now I want to know God. And they say, well, just sit there and be quiet, relax your mind, release all of your emotions, release all of your thoughts, and just get your mind in that original state of vibration, of a little bit of movement, and just be at peace. That actually takes you very close. This is as close as we can actually get to that original state of the spherical matrix, that spherical pattern at the heart of us. Because when it first begins to express, it first expresses into the mental body. So this bladder meridian is a person beginning to wake up. And it's that state of innocence, like Gemini is innocent. It's that state of just, I'm feeling, not feeling, it's like I sense movement. But within that movement, within that little bit of a movement, all of a sudden there's a flood. That comes the gallbladder, which is the next step. So we go back to that person on the boat, rocking back and forth, and their eyelids begin to open up a little bit. And the gallbladder meridian is going to start right next to it. Because the bladder starts here, above the eyes, and the gallbladder meridian starts a little bit out here. So as the eyes begin to open up, they see the sun reflecting off of little puddles of water in the boat. And it's beautiful, right? All of a sudden, you open your eyes and you see this beautiful reflection of the sun on this little pool of water rocking back and forth in the boat. And what's happening there is once you begin to wake up and your mind begins to function, this light enters it to actually start creating images, forms. But it just starts out as light without form. It starts out as light with all kinds of potential and the most abundant white light. And so the mind, as it begins to move, the next step is it begins to fill with light. And that light then becomes the consciousness that we're going to be able to see things. Now, what you'll see here as you go through the meridian order starts with air, which is movement. And then it goes into 3 fire elements, which would be like the planet the sun, and then to Mars, and then to Jupiter, if you're looking at it from astrology.
Is that kind of why the breathing's a big deal with meditation often?
Right. Then you'll get into these fire breaths. You'll get into these different types of breathing to fire up the consciousness. But these are stories. Each one of these is a story, and you have to be able to live the story.
Yeah.
So at bladder, the eyes begin to open up. At gallbladder, we begin to see lights. But it's just like a kaleidoscope of colors blending around. Nothing seems to make sense. It's just lights twinkling like a kaleidoscope. But then we begin to recognize, as we begin to focus with the next one, the heart. And we can take from all those lights images. We can identify an image within that light. We may have no idea what it means. Maybe we see a letter, a word, or we see a puddle of water on some wood reflecting the sun. But we were able to distinguish something in those lights. And then the liver comes, and the liver wants to flow and expand to say, what does that all mean? And so very quickly, this fire energy can very quickly produce images that extend to great distances. Because you have this fire energy really fast. And this is the power of the mental body, to have so much fire energy very fast at the very beginning, that it begins to move, and then all of a sudden lights, images, and all of a sudden this person who's on the bottom of the boat looks out and they see a little puddle of water, and all of a sudden they think, I'm in a boat, I'm sleeping, and then very, very quickly it's like, oh, our boat sank last night. All of the images return of why they're there. But it took their mind a moment to get back to that through producing these images. And they said, okay, I'm on a boat, I see a puddle of water. And then it's like, what does that all mean? And then the mind thinks so fast that it remembers, the boat sank last night. And all the images come flooding back into their mind of what happened.
This sounds a lot like a video montage of a movie where you start in the middle and you don't know what's happening, and then it comes together.
Yes. Certain memories, this is how memories come back. They come back as a flood of images. In each image is like the heart meridian, distinguishing one image. But then you get a series of images, and then that's going to that next step, the liver. So it just shows you.
Have you heard of Jeffrey Allen?
No.
So he says in your chakras and in your energy field, you store pictures.
Right.
And so he says it's like a concept or an energy pattern, right? And
it's called an elemental.
Okay.
This is
the
actually,
more that you have,
this is how Jesus healed, by the way, through elementals.
So he said that the more coherent, and as the pictures come together into a bigger picture, you're able to operate more in harmony with truth and reality, rather than it's just a story that you came up with, that your belief that may not. This is more like a burden instead of an energy that gives you more life.
Yeah, Ben, this is going to open up a lot of these things that you're searching. As we go through this, you're going to see it all come together at the end.
Okay. Keep going.
Okay, so we're basically just going through this development order for consciousness. Emotions is how we are experiencing life, how life is impacting us, how we're impacting life. That's the emotions. But then there's this consciousness of things. And that's where we get to the mental body, and it's completely different. Even though it's the same 12 meridians or 12 archetypes, it is still a different order. And understanding that order sets up a different vibration of our expression. Okay, so you go through movement, and then all of a sudden, 3 fires in a row, the mind is just full of images. Now what? Well, now the stomach has to ground us. The stomach, meridian, fixed earth has to ground us. So that we don't get lost in all of these images flooding our mind. We have to make sense of it all. We have to find out where we are. So the stomach brings us and grounds us to where you go back to that person waking up on the boat, realizing that they are now lost at sea, and they are and their mind is telling them, you're lost at sea and you could die. And then the stomach has to say, where am I? And they have to like feel the boat, feel their body. Am I still alive? It's one of the first things that people do when they think they're dead, is they try to feel their body. Am I still alive? Right? And that's when the stomach comes in here. It's that next step in consciousness to think, where am I? What can I feel? What's going to ground me here? What's my reality? And then you'll see in the next four symbols from stomach, lung, spleen, and large intestine, it goes earth, air, or from Chinese medicine, earth, metal, earth, metal. And the whole thing here is the stomach is trying to ground the consciousness into the reality. What is the reality here? And then the lung will try to describe, okay, you're on a boat. Look at the boat. You can see the form of the boat. You have a sail. Look up above you. You have a sail. So the stomach and the lung begin to identify all the elements of the story here. So from stomach to lung, you're looking around. Earth is observing. The earth element is observation. You want to gather in information. You want to develop a foundation of understanding. That's the earth. And then from that, the lung comes along and gives these things form. So first, the stomach wants to touch everything in the experience. Okay, let's take that person on the boat. Is the boat leaking? Does the rudder work? Does the sail work? Right? They're touching all these things. I've got the sail. I have a boat. I have some food. Do I have any food? Maybe they can touch a little bag of food. Okay.
I understand my wife now why she needs to go to the store to shop. She hates online shopping. She has to see it and touch it.
Yeah, it's like you have to touch it and identify it and know what it's really like. Now, as you go earth, air. Okay, so the first half of this order is filling your mind with images and being able to identify things. Simple. But it takes 6 steps to really develop that picture in your mind. That you begin to move, all the colors come in, the colors begin to take forms and shapes and then begin to extend into different patterns. That's all the fire. And then all of a sudden it becomes stomach and lung, fixed earth, cardinal air. And now you begin to identify everything. Okay, now I can see the picture. So this can happen very fast in consciousness so that we can live. But to go into meditation and do these steps slowly, one by one, is a whole different experience. When you slow it down and take them one at a time, that sets you over the edge. I mean, that prepares you for another level when you can actually understand the speed of consciousness by going one step at a time. Now we're going to go into the second half of this mental order. In the first one, spleen, large intestine, is this process. This is what you were talking about, Ben, where some people, like that one lady, your coworker says that she can see things, but she doesn't know how to process them. This is where you function. Spleen, large intestine, you're processing the logic to develop the understanding and the laws so that you can explain these things. So we go back to that person on the boat and says, okay, I have a boat, I have some food, I have a sail. All I have to do is point that sail into the right direction and the boat will start to move. So these things will work. I'm processing the information that I have so that I can piece together what I need to do. So now we're going all the way up to large intestine. So we're going through this kind of fast because actually this happens very fast in consciousness. Within a few seconds, a person can within a few seconds, a person can wake up, and within, 15 seconds, they've already have it figured out what they need to do with the boat. Because they've
But
got,
the same's true if you have a pattern that's not useful. Like, some trauma or something went wrong in your life and you've developed a pattern that doesn't serve you, your highest good. And it's like going back through your computer program, trying to find which line of code, line 1 through 12, where did I make the bug? And when you don't have any line numbers on your code, it's really hard to debug.
right. And also when our consciousness, every thought we have, every emotion that we have creates that elemental.
Yeah.
And that elemental, like that person said, is in our aura. It actually sits near our solar plexus. On both sides, like where the liver and the spleen are, on those sides, the elementals will sit there. So every thought that we have creates an elemental. And these elementals begin to connect and form larger pictures. And that's like heart to liver. Each elemental is like heart being created. And then you connect them. Now you're getting to that liver expansion. So as you process these things, what does it say? That we have elementals that are negative. We have elementals that are positive. Some that help us, some that hurt us. Some give us pain, some will heal us. It's all this mixture of things inside of our consciousness. And we've gone through this mental order millions upon millions and millions of times in our lifetime. Every time we process a thought, we're going through this order. Every time we react to something, we're going through this order to try to understand. And every time we go through this order, it creates an elemental. You'll see at the end. And so you get this network of elementals that we have to deal with. And each one of those elementals is a picture that tries to flash into your mind to try and control your consciousness.
Well, and when you have useful ones, you're not hindered. But when you have unuseful ones, it's like you're spending so much of your energy now to run all these programs on your computer, as it were. And you don't even care about those because you only want your browser to work or PowerPoint.
That's why traditions throughout history have said you have to clear out your subconscious. You have to find a way to do that, whether it is just blanking out and not allowing it into your consciousness or going through it and cleaning it up. A lot of traditions have had to do that because otherwise it just becomes all this baggage on your consciousness that you have to deal with, that you have to carry. And then you can never actually calm your mind down because you have all this baggage from every thought, every memory, every emotion that you've ever lived, trying to get into your consciousness. So here we've gone up into large intestine to where we have all these images, and now we're developing a process to understand how these images are related and how they function. All the way up to large intestine. Now we come into this last four: pericardium, kidney, sanjiao, small intestine. Water. You get 3 water in a row. And this is where we really need to understand what we're going to do with this information. How are we going to understand it? What's it going to create? What's it going to solve? What's going to be the consequence? How can I really think this through? I have the information, I kind of understand the process here, but how am I really going to think this through and really understand it so I do this correctly? And that's
Is this where you make the connections between the different concepts and you're able to go, oh, that's how these fit together and now I understand, kind of thing?
You're still at spleen and large intestine at that point.
Okay. This is a different kind of understanding.
This is the understanding that develops wisdom.
Okay.
To say, okay, from my experience, that's not going to work. Or what you say is let's take that person on the boat. They wake up and they're in a state of panic, but they're still trying to kind of control their mind so they can think through this situation. And so they have to kind of calm down and sit down and say, okay, It's not good. It doesn't do any good to freak out. Doesn't do any good to panic. I've got a boat. Okay, I've got a sail. Where do I go? And then they have to kind of figure out, okay, there's the sun. Which way's north? Which way's west? Which way is south? Where is probably the closest land? So they have to process at a deeper level of things they cannot even see. They have to like look at the sun and the horizon and think, I think east is that way. I think that's where the closest land is. So it's things they can't even see, but because they process the information so much, they can understand things they can't even see yet.
This is where the intuitive wisdom is coming out, where you instinctual knowledge.
Right. And
Okay.
and as people live day to day, a lot of people don't even think at this level. They just kind of go up to the spleen, large intestine, get some information and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I understand. But they don't really think it through, right? There's a certain point in this where you're processing it and you start to grab the rudder and the sail and you start to sail the boat. You start to get a direction. And even though you have currents underneath you in the ocean, you still have to trust the way you're going is correct. And that's when you get into this water area of the mind of thinking, I've processed all this information and I understand it to the point, but now I need to just put it into practice and refine it so that my mind knows exactly what to do. So at pericardium, which is cardinal waters, that first step of understanding to say, all right, I understand everything. I understand how the sail works, the boat works. I understand that I have a little bit of wind. What am I going to do? How am I going to make all this work? And you have to start with one thing at a time. Okay, let me figure out this sail. Let me get this sail working. Now I'm going to get the rudder working. Now I'm going to look around and try and figure out where west and east are. So in each little part of the picture, you're trying to figure it out. And then at the kidney, you say, okay, let's put this all together. I got to do this with the sail with my left hand. I got to use the rudder with my right hand to steer the boat. I got to pick a point to a certain angle to the sun, and I got to hold that and just move. Now you're putting all that knowledge together, combining it so that you can move in a certain direction. And then once you've got that all kind of coordinated, you're at Sanjiao, which is like the seed element coordinating all of the physiological functions in our body through the endocrine system.
So is that right before that is kind of the commitment to take the rudder and trust?
The commitment really comes at Sanjiao.
Okay.
Before that, you're kind of coordinating it. So it's still part of processing, but it's not a logical processing. It's sort of a feeling. Even though we're in the mental body, it's kind of like you're sensing how these things are supposed to work. You've controlled your emotions. Now you're calm emotionally. You say, I got this. And now what you do with the water is you're saying, now I'm going to put it together and make this work. So this is not emotional. The emotional body is different. This is a mental processing step represented by water, which most people think is emotional. But no, there's actually a water aspect to how the mind works. So then you get to Sanjiao, and you're holding the sail with your left hand, you're holding the rudder with your right hand, you're picking a point, and you've got everything coordinated, you're on your way. So that's really where the commitment comes from. When you look at astrologically, and you go through the signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, you come to Libra, Libra is getting to know people, you know, fiance, girlfriend, boyfriend, right? You're getting to know people. But that commitment comes at Scorpio, which is the Sanjiao, this fixed water. That's where you really commit to a relationship. At Libra, it's like, hey, I like you, you like me. I wonder where we're going to go with this. You know, where do we go with this thing? Am I going to stay with you the rest of my life? And if two people say yes, they commit, then they enter into that Sanjiao. It's like, okay, you're the best one for me. I'm committed. The last step is where a couple of these concepts we talked about before are going to come together for you. It's cardinal earth. So if you've done all this correctly and you've prepared yourself and you're using everything correctly, that person in the boat is going to see a little spot of land, cardinal earth, on the horizon, and they're going to be like, I made it. There it is. Just head towards that point, the cardinal earth. And that's when you figured it out. That's when you know you solved the puzzle, you figured it out, and now you just head towards that little piece of land, cardinal earth, that's poking out of the horizon. But what's happening inside of our bodies is Sanjiao is coordinating our physiology. Sanjiao is coordinating our emotions and coordinating our minds so that everything is working together so that we can handle this situation. We don't freak out. Sanjiao takes all of that experience and packages it into an elemental, a little piece of energy that becomes that thought, and gives that to small intestine meridian. Small intestine meridian comes right up here between the eyes where it's going to meet with the bladder meridian and produces an elemental, and that elemental goes out from between the eyes. An elemental that goes out from between the eyes is, how can I say it? It's just traditions around throughout history have said this is how it happens. We go through this whole process of all these, starting at bladder, developing the consciousness, and it goes through all of these meridians very quickly, and at the end it comes back to that original point and puts out an elemental. Like Jesus said, you'll send out, something will leave the house. I forget, what was that term? Do you remember, Ben?
Say some more, and maybe it'll ring a bell.
Something goes out, and then as it goes out, it picks up like 7 demons worse before it comes back to you.
That's starting to ring a bell. I'm trying to remember what it is, though. Let's see.
Was it? I forget the word that you read. Daniela, do you know?
I remember. It's when if you clean your house and you don't put something in the place, then it will come back. It will come exactly, and then it will come back 7 times worse. In this case, it's 7 demons.
Oh yeah, and that energy principle I learned was once you clear out something, you need something to replace it with. Otherwise, it just sucks right back in.
Exactly. So as these elementals are projected, they can be very small. They're just like a point of light that mystics can see as they leave this area between the eyes and then begin to travel around the world. But they can come back after they've picked up elementals that are very like it, and then they come back as like a group elemental. So if we go back to the Bible, when Jesus saw this man going crazy, and they asked him, what is your problem? They thought he has demons. And he says, well, these demons are called legion. And legion is just a multitude of elementals going crazy. So Jesus took these elementals out of the person and put them into the pigs. And then the pigs ran off the cliff. But that was the basic process of taking the elementals out of the person. There's so many stories I could tell you about elementals, but that would be for another class, I think, another time to talk. Right now, it's just understanding the mental body is to say that it produces a thought in such a way that that's going through all this 12 steps in that order produces a thought that we can actually package as a seed with all of the elements. That's why it's called an elemental, because it takes all of the elements to create it. And then that elemental will sit down in our subconscious. But it takes going through all of these meridians to create that elemental, that little, when I see them, they look like little jelly beans in the subconscious.
Well, it's kind of like when you put a whole computer program together. Now you emboss an image and an energy pattern and you deploy it.
See, Ben, you have gone through this process so many times in the way you work. In grabbing together the information, all the elements of the information. Okay, you're going through the first 4 steps. Now you're identifying what you have and seeing how it all fits together. You're going through the next 4 steps up to large intestine. And now you're going to say, okay, now what can we do with this? What can we create? And once you go through those last 4 steps of water to small intestine, boom, now you've got an image of what you can actually do with the knowledge. You're going to
I feel like this is something you do in concert with God or the quantum field, and you don't do it alone. I think that's the mistake I used to make, was thinking you create alone, and you really don't create alone. You create with the whole universe.
Yes. Yeah. When I was discovering all of this, I was down in Guatemala, and I was just walking through the streets one day, just walking. It was just one of those days where I just got out and walked. And I was walking to the next town, and all of a sudden I saw all these people walking to somewhere. So I said, okay, I'm just going to follow them and walk with them wherever they're going. And they all walked to a soccer game, football, right? Very big in Brazil. So they all walked to the soccer game. So I went in, I sat down with everybody, and I began to watch the game. But I didn't speak Spanish very well at that time, and I wasn't talking to anybody, and I didn't know I didn't know who should win. So it didn't matter to me. So something in my mind said, just watch the ball. So for the whole game, I just sat there watching the ball bounce, move around, and there were these little shadowy figures kind of moving the ball, but I wasn't looking at them. I was just looking at the ball. And a couple of years later, I realized everything that I was studying was the soccer ball, that pattern around the soccer ball. But something in that moment was telling me, look at the ball, focus. It didn't tell me the answer is there. Everything you're trying to do is right there. It didn't tell me that. It just said, look at the ball. And it planted the seed in my mind that eventually I would recognize it. So that one day I turned the corner, a friend tried to surprise me with this little stuffed soccer ball.
Yeah, I read about that, yeah.
And as soon as I saw that ball flying through the air, I knew that's it.
Instinctual.
I had put all of that information through my head, going through all of these steps. And then at that Sanjiao, that 11th step.
Yeah, you prepared the ground. You prepared the soil, to plant the seed to allow the...
As soon as I saw that thing flying through the air, it all made sense. I grabbed that ball, I went and sat down, and I saw everything. Everything just went boom. And it takes me back to years earlier when a spirit was telling me, just look at the soccer ball. That's the answer. And so, like you say, we don't do this alone. It's like someone saying, you're just go in this direction. Be patient, you'll get there, but this is the direction you're going to go. You may not know it, and probably you don't know it, but that's where you're going. And then once I got that soccer ball in my hand, boom, that elemental was complete. And a new elemental was created saying, this is a spherical pattern. And within 4 months, I was visiting a mystic, Stylianos Ateshlis, going, what is this thing? Because he was writing in his book exactly a spherical pattern with 6 dimensions into 12 dimensions. And I was reading in Revelations, this made sense. And so I went to talk to the mystic, and there I got the understanding of what this thing really was. And it was much deeper than I had ever imagined. And then I had to prepare for other things.
Yeah, there's this concept I've used called packets of light, where you get a piece of light, but it doesn't tell you the whole picture. But if you act on that packet of light and enhance it, then the next packet comes, and it's this building upon layer. And this really fits with that concept. Those are the only words I knew how to kind of describe it.
So you may not really understand how all these steps are distinguished. You know, how are these last couple of steps in water really different from earth, air in the middle? Because it's all kind of processing information. So it takes a little bit of experience to observe and watch how your mind works through these things of gathering information, seeing how things connect, the principles by which they're working. And then as an engineer, you begin to understand the creative aspect of your mind. To be able to take, like, what was that, MacGyver? Take a match, like a matchstick or toilet paper and other things, and all of a sudden you've made a boat, right? It's those last couple of steps in water that really allows your creative mind to produce something you can't even see, to understand something you can't even see. This is where a lot of people end up into faith, because their mind begins to understand Jesus or Spirit or God, and then all of a sudden there's so many things that they can't see or understand yet, but they just have to have faith. But they're getting prepared, so when that moment comes, they'll recognize it. And that's that water, that higher development of the mind that you prepared, and now you're ready for something that you've never seen before. You can kind of recognize it, but when you see it, you'll know it. And that's that water. All that water at the end has to come very quickly in some sense. Even though it's water, it has to come like, no, that moment of understanding, that moment of insight, when all of a sudden you can see. When people have discovered molecules, or when people have written songs, when those moments of creativity, all of a sudden it just happens out of nothing. They say it's just like a moment of inspiration, and all of a sudden I just understood.
And there's a second piece to that, which is the planets and the globe. Is inventions often come in similar times. People have common insights around the same time too. So that there seems like the planets also are part of that in the universe.
So what we see here is the simple little process of how the mind works. Right? It's just 12 steps. Putting the information together, processing it, and then having a flash of insight. Seems simple enough, right? But now that we know this is working, now we can use this to our advantage. Now we can focus our mind on something and say, okay, I'm going to really understand this. Okay, let's pick something. Let's say we want to understand, pick something.
Your career, let's say.
Your career, something in your career, something more specific, something simple.
Okay, something specific. Well, maybe like how to help my son develop emotionally and mature, right? Like,
okay, something complicated. Okay.
Okay, let's do something simple. Okay, for the sake of story.
Right, exactly.
What to cook for dinner? Let's try that.
Exactly. Okay. So the first step, bladder, you sensing a movement. What is that? All of a sudden, the mind is kind of filling with some sort of image. So your bladder, gallbladder, and then all of a sudden the heart pops an image and says, I'm hungry. So that moment of deciding I'm hungry goes very quickly. Bladder, gallbladder, heart. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, hungry. Okay, how hungry am I? Now we're at liver. Well, actually, it's time to eat. I'm kind of hungry, so yeah, let's go ahead and fix. It looks like it's time. Okay, then the stomach. What's in the refrigerator? So you open up the refrigerator, you go, okay, there's some milk and some eggs and some bread, right? So, okay. So you're identifying things that you have available to eat. Okay, we've gone through the first 6 steps very quickly. Now, okay, I can take some of that milk and some of the eggs. Maybe I can scramble up the eggs, make something on bread or a sandwich or a salad. So you're kind of processing all the options of what you can do with what you have. That's spleen, large intestine. You're just you're getting a sense of what you can do with what you have available to you. And so you have, okay, I can make a sandwich, I can make maybe a pizza or a salad. And then the pericardium comes in and says, you know, I need something healthy because someone said I need to eat healthy. So maybe I won't have pizza, maybe I'll have a salad. So it begins that first step of deciding with wisdom, what's the best thing to eat? And then kidney comes in and says, well, what kind of salad should I include? Cheese, meat, salt? What should I put in my salad? And then ultimately you come down to Sanjiao where you've coordinated everything, you put it all together, and then, so this is all happening in the mind, and then at small intestine, cardinal earth, now you've got the picture. You've determined, you've discerned what you want to eat. Small intestine, Saturn, Capricorn, that's all about discernment. Being able to say, this is exactly what it is, and discerning a clear picture. This is cardinal earth. You get a clear picture of exactly what it is. And once you have that clear picture, you've produced that elemental, boom, that elemental leaves from your forehead, your hands begin to follow it, and that elemental grows into food before you. Using the things that you have available to you. Now you go to Jesus, who gave thanks in front of 5,000 people, created a clear image of fish and bread to that level to say, this is what the people need. Jesus created that image so clearly and knew how to manifest it. That elemental was manifested into actual form. We can actually understand the science of how Jesus performed, but it was his consciousness. And this is what we're studying here in the mental body, is the consciousness to create these images, but these images can actually be manifested into food. You know, if we can't manifest energy into matter, we have to cook it. Jesus could manifest energy into matter. But for us, we get the image, then we have to create that image with the things that our hands can touch. Or maybe we have to get some money and buy those things. But Jesus was beyond that. He could take that mental image and just create it. There's the mystic Stylianos Ateshlis would tell the story that he had a friend, and his friend was building a hotel. And the friend came to give him some advice to kind of like show him the blueprints of the hotel. And Stylianos was looking at him, and the guy says, wait, no, you have to look here at the blueprints on the table to see. And Stylianos kept looking directly at him, at his face. And he said, why are you looking at me? Look here. He says, I can see everything in that elemental between your eyes. I can see the whole hotel. I can see the rooms. I can see the hallways. I can even see that in that bathroom on the top floor, you have gold fixtures on the faucets, on the toilets, on the shower. Everything's gold. And the guy says, how do you know that? And Stylianos says, I can see the whole hotel inside your brain, or inside that elemental sitting right here. And
yeah,
the guy,
the energies become so clear and embossed in your pattern.
exactly. So when you've got the whole image clear like that, it becomes an elemental that other mystics can see and read. And they know exactly what you're thinking. They know exactly what you're seeing, because they can see the images in your head, in your consciousness, in your mental body. And the guy said, well, that's going to be my bathroom, and I want gold fixtures for my bathroom, right? And so it's like, okay, that's just extra money for you. But so this is the idea. We put it all together, and then we see that there's going to be this point of light that we can actually contact. People call it the third eye. I don't know what to call it. I just know that there's meridians coming to that point, and there's things coming out of that area. I will say one more thing, that many traditions, including Chinese medicine and the Kabbalah, and this mystic that I knew, Stylianos Ateshlis, that there are 3 areas of the body. There's down in the abdomen, there's like a ball of energy down there.
The 3 treasures?
The 3 treasures. And the ball down at the bottom corresponds to the physical body. The ball in the chest corresponds to the emotional body. This ball in the head corresponds to the mental body. That's what we're looking at. When that mental body creates an image, it leaves through here. Now, when I want to see images in my brain, or not really brain, but when I want to see images, I'll concentrate my eyes. My eyes are closed, and I'll concentrate my eyes on that point of space in front of my eyes. I'll look to see if I can see anything in that darkness when your eyes are closed. And when I begin to do that, that's when pictures begin to pop out really clear, because I'm focusing.
Just in front of your body right here, in that space that put your awareness right here.
Yeah, it's like if you close your eyes, and sometimes you're just sitting there thinking and daydreaming, and all of a sudden you realize you're not really looking at anything in particular. Well, and that's in that darkness. I try and look into that darkness in front of my eyes and try and see if there's a picture there. And then I wait, and then all of a sudden, these really clear pictures will all of a sudden show up. I mean, clearer than anything in my daydreaming. I'll actually be able to, I can actually see the colors, and I can see the definition between one color and another color. And you can actually encourage these images to appear more clearly in front of your eyes by focusing. And that's that heart meridian. And on the 3rd step here is you're taking that potential to see and trying to focus it. That cardinal fire, you're trying to create in that moment something specific, something clear. And then when it comes together and forms this nice little picture, you've got the heart liver working together. So a lot of artists have a really strong liver. And sometimes they overwork their liver and it becomes weak, and then they don't have that inspiration to create. But then they wait for that inspiration to come back into their liver meridian, and then they are able to see these images. And then they begin to paint it through stomach, lung, spleen, large intestine. That's their art. That's the craft of being able to take the medium with which they're working that the stomach is the medium, 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 medium. The stuff that they're working with, whether it's watercolor or clay or crayon or oil or ceramic,
It's their canvas.
it's their canvas and their paints. That's their stuff. That's the stomach. And then they start to take that material and begin to create that image that they have in their mind. At lung becomes the artist. Libra, the artist, creating forms. Some of the best singers, some of the best artists in the world are from the sign Libra because they can just clearly give form to what is in their mind. They hear the song and they can give it clear form. They see the picture, they can give it clear form.
This is the music composition process. This is what it sounds like for me, because I can compose something, but I have to prepare, know all these scales and patterns, and I just figure out a pattern, and then I'll compose on the spot, and I'll just feel it. I don't have to think it through.
Right, you just went through a couple of the other steps beyond this really fast.
Sorry.
But see, you get to that point where it's like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it becomes so second nature, so instinctual, that you go through this step really fast and say, okay, now I got all that together, boom, and you just do it. Because you've learned how to go from beginning to end really fast. Some artists can just sit down and within a couple of seconds, they have the picture in their mind and they're ready to sit down.
It's in the middle or the beginning where I get stuck. If I don't have the fuel, the inspiration, then forget it. And then if I haven't done the preparation, it's really hard to have another creative idea.
So what we're doing right here is we're applying this order in different ways. We're applying it to an artist, and I applied it to a story of a person waking up, realizing they're lost at sea, trying to control their emotions and not panicking and think through the situation, getting that boat worked until they finally see the land. So this becomes the story of how we can actually fulfill thoughts. And this is the mental body, this processing, it's symbols. When John went up to the third heaven in this area and began to see all these symbols, it's like you're going through the first 6 steps here. You're seeing all these colors and lights and forms and images, and you're trying to identify them. That you're at stomach and lung. I'm seeing stars, I'm seeing horses, I'm seeing beings and angels, I'm seeing doors, I'm seeing trees and fruits and rivers. So he's like identifying all these things that he's seeing and then trying to process the information is like, okay, what does this mean? And I don't know if we really ever get in Revelations. In Brazil, they might say Apocalypse, that part of the Bible. They don't really ever get to that water area in Revelations to really understand what does all this mean? What is New Jerusalem? What is New Jerusalem a place on the earth, or is it someplace in spirit that people are trying to go for? The spiritual people are trying to reach the spiritual state, or is it a town over that mountain? It's like, how are we going to interpret this? And that's when you get into that water level. At the end of this mental body is, how are we going to understand the information like in Revelations? What does it really mean, New Jerusalem? How do these symbols make sense for the New Jerusalem? Is it going to save the world, or is it my spiritual awakening? Well, from what I know about John, it's a spiritual awakening. Everything in Revelations has to lead us towards a spiritual awakening. So I take that, when it comes to that water, these last couple of steps of water, that's where I go with Revelation. How does this speak to my spiritual resurrection? Like you say, how does this relate to my spiritual resurrection? And then I try to use my water at that point to put it together and understand it, to see things, to understand things that I can't see. but then I can understand how that applies to the resurrection. And then if I get a clear picture of that, I hold it and create an elemental and say, okay, this is as far as I can go. Boom, small intestine. Now I have a little elemental right here showing what I understand, what I think. So you can actually use this pattern to direct your thoughts. Where do I want to direct my thoughts? Do I want to direct them towards spirit? Do I want to direct them towards the world, towards my work, towards my relationships, towards my son who needs some type of healing? How am I going to apply this and then understand these creative aspects of the mind to really develop a unique healing for my son? Where's the inspiration going to come from? Where's that element that says all of a sudden, now I understand, now we can live in peace? I mean, even if you can't heal something, you understand, how can I frame this? How can I picture this situation with my son so at least we're all living in peace, happy with it? We can deal with this. How can we prepare ourselves for the hard times? I took care of my father for many years. He had Parkinson's. Hey, I wasn't going to heal his Parkinson's. That was just the way he had to live the last few years of his life. Okay, what are we going to do here? I can't heal it. I'm not going to frustrate myself trying to heal this Parkinson's. It's impossible. It's just what happened to his brain. Okay, well, let's go ahead and have some funny times, watch some TV, have some laughs, make it enjoyable. But we're not going to heal it. It's just all this is leading to eventually he's going to die and he's going to move on. And so it's understanding what you have and then kind of realizing, we're not going to really be able to change this situation. So we're just going to have to deal with it. It makes me think of what Francis Assisi wrote in his moment of inspiration. God, grant me the courage to change. Yeah. Grant me the courage to change the things that I can, to accept the things that I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
And that's when you come into that water element at the end of this cycle. It's the wisdom to know the difference of what you can and cannot do. Whoever Francis of Assisi was, he had a moment of inspiration. He understood something about human nature, about how the mind works. Hey, with wisdom, we're going to understand what we can and cannot do, and then we do what we can. So through all of this, I tried to give you a sense of what the order is, the steps that's involved, and the different ways that we can begin to understand and apply this knowledge, this awareness of the order within our mental processes. So, sorry, Daniela, we went over 2 hours.
No problem. I was thinking this is just one more of the miracles from soccer, right? Because everything starts with the ball.
I was watching the FIFA, history of FIFA movie, and all I could think of was spherical meridian the whole time I'm watching.
Right. We have other miracles. We have Pele, Ronaldinho.
More miracles from soccer.
Nehemiah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Brazil is a miracle of soccer just to begin with. See, I would think that this knowledge coming from the soccer ball would just go like fire in Brazil. When you start telling people life is based upon the soccer ball, and we have all this knowledge to kind of support that thought, I would think people in Brazil would just go crazy over this spherical pattern and everything it does of integrating acupuncture with astrology and all this stuff. But I remember at one time when I realized that all of these symbols and all of these symbolic patterns and the mathematics of acupuncture and astrology, that it all came down to this soccer ball pattern. And then I was like, oh my God, what symbol in the world is more common than the cross of Christianity? What symbol in the world is more used by more people throughout the world? What symbol brings people together around the world more than like the cross of Christianity or any other symbol? It's that football, that little.
It stopped the war.
It
Do
stops
you know
wars
this? Yeah. Do you know this
between
story?
Iran and Iraq.
Exactly. It stopped the war for the soccer game. Yeah, for them to watch.
When was that?
I don't know. We need to search in the internet, but
80 or 90s.
yes.
So it's
Kind of like
Exactly.
when they had in World War II, they stopped on Christmas Day.
so it's wonderful to have the cross, or it's wonderful to have these symbols of Jesus and of Christianity. But there's a symbol that's even more common and even more powerful around the world, and that's the soccer ball. I was flying over different countries, and on mountaintops you can see a soccer field. I was down in Guatemala, living in a little village, learning Spanish, and there was this temple ruins, and there was a temple from a long time ago, and it had crashed down over the years, and there were rocks, everything. The little kids would play soccer in it with their little soccer ball, and so I began to, and I didn't realize at the time that little soccer ball was like this. That's the symbol of life. It's the seed of life made into 3 dimensions. It's the flower of life made into 3 dimensions. It's the soccer ball. It's those 12 patterns that John was talking about. 3 doors to the left, 3 doors to the right, 3 doors above, 3 doors below, something like that. When you understand the mathematics of the buckyball molecule, and you look at how the energy patterns reverberate, the energy centralizes in the pentagons. In the hexagons, the energy disperses and concentrates in the pentagons. So you have these 12 concentrations of energy around the buckyball molecule. That tells us something, that when this structure is created, there's places for these 12 archetypes to fit because the energy is concentrating there. We see that in the science of the buckyball, when they understand how energy is moving through that molecule. When we apply that to the spiritual spherical pattern, we can see how these 12 archetypes of God take their place in order to create personalities, in order to create bodies, in order to create meridians, in order to create this tree of life and the fruits of 12 that John was talking about in Apocalypse, Revelations. So it really kind of all comes together into that soccer ball. Is it really just the soccer ball? And what are people doing with it? They're kicking it around. Everybody's kicking it. But it's the most stable structure. The buckyball molecule is the most stable molecule known. It can hit a spacecraft at 18,000 miles per hour and just bounce off of it. Other molecules just get obliterated. But it's the one molecule that can actually hit a spacecraft traveling at supersonic speeds and just bounce off and not fall apart. And if God was going to create a structure upon which eternal life would be built, it would be the most stable molecule structure that we know of. So this is like as advanced as we can get right now to understand the science of the spherical structure. So There you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sticking around so long, Daniela.
It was awesome.